On this episode of Lodo Studio, we're going to talk about some basic shot composition, so stick around. Welcome to Lodo Studio. I am your host, Jason Church. In the previous weeks, we've talked a great deal about lighting, and last week I promised you we were going to get off of lighting because we've done so much with it. So, as promised, this week we're going to talk about some basic shot composition. As in anything, there are rules, and of course, there's always the rule that all rules are made to be broken. However, in order to know how and when to break the rules of cinematography, you need to know what the basic rules are. So today, we're going to talk about one basic rule. It's called the rule of thirds. Now, the way that the rule of thirds works is simple. Imagine two lines drawn through your frame that divide the frame into thirds this way. Also imagine two lines drawn horizontally through your frame that divide your frame this way. Those are going to be the basis for how we're going to frame some shots today. Framing your shots is all about making them look more interesting. Now you'll notice that in this shot, I am actually in the dead center of the shot. For a talking head video like this one, it is appropriate to put your subject in the center of the frame. However, for most videos that you're going to want to shoot, unless they're vlog style or talking head style, you're not really going to want your subject in the center of the frame because it's just not visually appealing. So how do you use the rule of thirds to make your shots more interesting? Let's talk about the lines and where they intersect. The top line, while not always the case, will be the best place in most shots for your subject's eyes. If you'll look in your camera, and even in your smartphone, you may have the grids that divide your camera into thirds. Look for the settings so that you can do this, and it will help you to frame your shots. In this shot, my eyes actually rest on that top line. Even though I'm in the center of the frame, my eyes rest roughly on that top line. However, if you are shooting someone for, say, an interview, or if you're doing a dialogue in, say, a short film, you're going to want to place your subjects in a different part of the frame. So let's talk about nose room. When you have your subject set off center, say in the first third of the frame, you're going to want them looking towards where the negative space is. In other words, you want space in front of your subject. You wouldn't want to place your subject, let's say, on the right side of your frame, facing to the right of the frame, because there's going to be too much negative space behind your subject. Now let's talk about headroom. Where should the subject's head be placed? If you've got the camera in close, what happens? Is it okay to cut off your subject's head? And when you're talking about an extreme close-up, the answer is yes, because you do want the eyes placed in the right part of the frame. So you can cut your subject's head off some. However, in most applications of this principle, you do want some room above the subject's head. You don't need much, but as long as there is some room between the top of your subject's head and the top of the frame, that is going to help your framing tremendously. Remember the dialogue shot we talked about earlier? Well, I'm going to show you how that works. So we're going to talk about a rule called the 180-degree rule. Imagine a line going between the two subjects in the shot that are exchanging the dialogue. The 180-degree rule basically is a principle that says that you want to be shooting over one shoulder in the right direction. You never want to cross that 180-degree line, because then when you switch to the other subject will be facing the wrong way for the shot. Alright, so this idea of the rule of thirds is great for shooting people, but what if you enjoy shooting landscapes, nature, wildlife? This rule applies as well. However, there's some other rules that go along with it that we'll discuss later on as we get into some more advanced composition techniques. But for now, practice with the rule of thirds and start experimenting with where you can put your subject in the frame. Perhaps if you are shooting a person walking through the park, you could potentially put a tree in the right-hand side of the frame and have them walking into the frame in the left-hand side. Have it divided up so that it's interesting, instead of just simply putting them in the center of the shot and having them walk towards you. It's more interesting if you've got things going on. Another way you might use this technique is if you're shooting the horizon. If you will put the horizon itself, the land, in just the lower third of the frame and keep the sky to the upper 2/3 of the frame, you're going to find that you'll get some interesting shots. Again, all rules can be broken if done the right way. So experiment with this rule and see what kind of creative shots you can come up with, and leave me a video response below to show me how you're using the rule of thirds. Alright, so just to recap, we talked about the rule of thirds. We discussed nose room, we discussed head room, we discussed the 180-degree rule, and we talked about some ways that you can use these rules. In the coming weeks, we'll dive more into composition, so stay with us. And as always, like, subscribe, comment, and share. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time. What kind of studio can you build for low to no dough? Come with me and let's find out.